Hello and welcome. This is We Make Art, and I'm your host, artist and mentor, Sarah Rockwood. Today's episode is very personal, tender, a little raw, and deeply formative. But before we begin, I want to say this clearly. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice, and if addiction is something you're wrestling with, please speak to a qualified therapist or medical professional. I'm simply here to share my lived experience in hopes that if addiction, whether it's wine, social media, vaping, work, perfectionism, or a specific person, or anything else, has ever had you in a grip, that something in today brings you relief, or recognition, or permission. Because you can be addicted to anything that helps you not to feel. And yes, you can be addicted to pot, and I was. It started in the early 2000s. My dad started smoking pot, a lot of pot. We didn't know it at the time, but he was struggling with some serious mental health issues and some intense physical pain that he wasn't sharing. But to deal with all that, he started smoking pot. A lot of pot. And eventually he started smoking with us, his children. And somewhere along the way, I started smoking on my own. A lot of pot. Alone. And at the time, I thought it was cool. I thought it made me cool. It felt very rock and roll, mystical, slightly rebellious. And I thought I was like mainlining spirit, astral projection, direct downloads, living in some liminal creative space where everything shimmered a little. But really, everything was just fuzzy. And I put myself in some dangerous situations. My father put us in dangerous situations. On a family trip to Mexico, we were doing some off-resort snorkeling. And at one point, my dad asked our private guide if he could get us some pot. And the whole vibe shifted instantly. The guide looked at me and my sister and then asked very seriously, "Are these two really your daughters?" And in that moment, something inside me knew we weren't safe. But we all laughed. We laughed it off and we got our drugs. And there were many times in college where you'd just ask around until you find yourself driving to like a stranger's house in the middle of the night for drugs. And no one knows where you are. And all you have is a flip phone. But I told myself that when I was high, I was expanding. In truth, I was muddying the waters. There's this myth in the arts that altered states make better art, make better artists. That you have to suffer, that you have to be a little destroyed. The the manic pixie dream girl. That brilliance lives in chaos. And for a while, I believed that. I thought I was rock and roll, until I hit a quiet kind of rock bottom. And I found myself living in a loosely converted factory. The kind of place that feels temporary even though it's not. Telling myself that it was a serious artist's loft. And there was a neighbor who would look through my windows, and it was very unsettling. It was this sort of constant low-grade hum of fear. And one night I smoked a joint, and I couldn't find the escape. The high that used to make me feel like some big, heavy artist was just gone. Instead, I looked around and I remember asking myself very clearly, how the fuck did I get here? And I wish I had a big cinematic story, of rehab, intervention, dramatic collapse. But the truth is, it ended with a whisper, a moment of stillness where I understood in my bones that something very bad was going to happen to me if I stayed where I was, if I kept living the way I was living. So I broke my lease. I found a tiny attic apartment in a good part of town, and I just stopped. No one really knew. No one really cared. But suddenly I was alone with the things I'd been running from. And you know what happened? My art got better. Not louder, not wilder, clearer, brighter, surprisingly more connected than I had ever experienced. When I was high, I could write a song. But sober, I could call one in. I could get still, get quiet, ask the universe for what I wanted to create, and it would arrive. And in the beginning, it felt like magic, and sometimes frightening because I no longer had that shield between me and my feelings. The grief, the longing, the ache. There was no buffer. But I stayed with it. And a few years into sobriety, the miracle of it stopped feeling miraculous. It became normal. The ability to call in what I needed for a song or a story simply became part of who I am. And it stayed with me. Through the depths of an abusive relationship, through autoimmune exhaustion, through seasons where I felt so fucking hollow. Even when I neglected the relationship with my art. When I only used it for the work and then shut the door as soon as the session ended, it was still there, waiting. I'm almost 18 years free of that addiction now. And I can tell you the connection to my art is stronger and truer than ever. I'm no longer an addict. I've tried smoking pot since, I've tried the odd edible, and honestly, I didn't enjoy it. Because I like how it feels to be me. I like how it feels to be present in my meditation. I like how it feels to connect with spirit, with a clear head. And I love how it feels to be in conversation with my art, with a clear mind, body, and soul. Here's what getting sober taught me about art making. Your art does not require your destruction. It requires your presence. An addiction of any kind is often an attempt to bypass, to blur, to escape the intensity of being alive. But art is about being here, fully. It's about clarity. It's about listening. It's about letting the water settle so you can see what's actually beneath the surface. When the water is muddy, you might still create. But when it's clear, you commune. And there is a difference. If you've been reaching for something outside yourself to make your art feel deeper, bigger, more mystical, what if the real power is in your sobriety? Not necessarily from substances, but from whatever numbs you. What if the most radical thing you could do for your artistry is to come home to your body, to sit with your feelings, to let yourself be clear? If this resonates with you, I invite you to explore the offerings we have at Elemental Alchemy. They're all designed to help you return to clarity in your body, your creativity, and your spirit. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can explore. But wherever you are in your own journey, I want you to know this. You do not have to destroy yourself to create something beautiful. You are allowed to feel clear. You are allowed to feel whole. You are allowed to feel good. And your art will meet you there. Thank you for listening. We'll talk soon.